can do a knowledge test and see how much people can talk the talk and the sort of words that you should be using if you're a strategic planner in local government, if you're an engineer on the railway, if you're in a power plant, if you're wherever. The leadership skills are harder to pin down, and that's because you don't often see people using those skills, and you can't really see people using those skills until they're actually in the role doing it and they're on their probationary period or they're after that. So I guess this is an opportunity to observe someone in the field doing the sort of things, having the kind of difficult conversations, tackling the sort of complexity that they would get actually in the role. And of course, it's a simulation. It's not exactly what you get in real life, but there's some traits and different habits that people will fall into, some of which are really, really useful. And they're the same sort of habits that probably got them into the position to be able to apply for that role or to be even in that role at the moment, if it's for a development purpose. And there are other things that where the feedback comes in that's really helpful, both recognising the stuff that they did really well, but also the things that okay, here's an area where I need some development or I could develop further. And there's things like that for everyone, by the way, for me and you and everyone else. But the beauty, I think, is just to observe that pressure and how people respond to that in the moment. So there's a bit at the beginning, there's a bit at the middle, and there's a bit towards the end. So the beginning part is really asking people about, if you were successful in this role, to talk to us about the future state and how you might go about that, what sort of things you might do in the future if you're successful in the role. And there's some specific questions we ask around that. The middle part is the scenario, where we throw different experiences at people, and they're a character playing a manager role in different scenarios, 3 or 4 different scenarios where they're hit with different levels of complexity. And finally, there's some reflection on you and your current capability, given the sort of answers that you were talking about in that scenario, and also what your experience has been. Well, what does that look like for you? What's my current state in terms of my skills and abilities? And very often, if an organisation has a capability framework, that's all designed according to their capability framework. So from the initial one, the middle bit about the scenarios, as well as the current state. And then after that, they get a report within a few days. Depending on whether it's for a developmental reason or for recruitment, the organisation will get that. We debrief, or we can debrief that with individuals. We always like doing that. And often there's a plan associated with that. So with some of our clients, it's a process of doing the capability process and then getting the report, and then a leadership program on the back of that to say, okay, here are some trends among this group of people. Here's some development that we can give you to address those opportunities, those weaknesses, as well as those strengths that those people have demonstrated.
Yeah, that cohort insight is really powerful as well. So for each individual, it takes about 2 hours, 2 to 2.5 hours. We tend to do it over the phone as well, so it's a little bit flexible that way in terms of timing.
I mean, the first thing I would say there is psychometric testing has its place. It can be a useful tool. But in comparison to leadership capability assessment, I find those to be a little bit more abstract, and sort of a couple of steps removed from how a person will interact, with colleagues, with direct reports. I find leadership capability assessments to be a more direct application of how an individual is viewing complexity, and particularly around the leadership components of their role. So that's probably how I differentiate.
Linked really strongly to the organizational capability requirements, a capability framework, if there is one. It's also really not cookie cutter. We design specific scenarios that are designed to meet organizational needs, to test what's really practically going to be useful for that person in their role, whether it's their current role for the future or whether they're being recruited into it. So it's just that really powerful practical component that makes the difference for us.
People want to know more, feel free to reach out to any one of us. We'd be happy to have a conversation about how leadership capability assessments might be helpful for their organisation.